Today, part 2 of the Golden Gate Killer. We'll learn things today that you did not know about the Golden State Killer, including how he eluded police for almost, get this now, 40 years. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It is what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
In this podcast are those solely of individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Peacemaker Network and Charlie Crime Buster. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. Today, part 2, the Golden State Killer. That guy who literally put fear all across the state of California. Probably one of the most unique serial killers in America's history. But first of all, a welcome to all. And before we even welcome you, let me say this episode is released on Memorial Day weekend. And it would be not right for us not to take time to mention and honor the brave men and women of the military, those who have given their lives for our freedom, men and women who literally lay down their lives for our freedom, to protect the lives of others. So Charlie Crime Buster would like to take the time to salute and honor the families of all of those who've given the ultimate sacrifice. We all should know by now that freedom is not free. It costs more than most people realize. So, my friend, as you and I enjoy spending time with our family, and do that every chance you get, please do not forget to take a moment. Take a moment to say a prayer for those families, and remember those who've given all that they have, and then some, for our freedom today. God bless America, and those who died to defend it. Now, if you are a new listener and would like to reach out with a shout-out, I invite you to email me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can ask questions, make suggestions, give criticism. It is indeed a safe zone. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the program, well, go on over there to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com, and you'll see how we support law enforcement, first responders, and the military every single day by them becoming a part of the Peacemaker Network. You can become a supporter, a BADGE supporter for as little as $3 a month. Go on over there, peacemakernetwork.com. Now, to start out our program, we always like to take the time to share a crazy crook story. And our story today, well, it comes from one of our listeners. So a great big thank you to Don Theo for sharing this crazy crook story. It happened on a Saturday night about 11:30 p.m. A vehicle, well, it was clocked 52 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. It was near a place in a city that's called 7th and Main Street, and it caught the attention of police, that is, police from the Springfield Police Department. They went ahead and initiated a traffic stop. They pulled the vehicle over, and the officer, well, he sees a lot of unusual things, but this was probably one of the most unusual things he had ever seen. As he pulled the vehicle over, he witnessed the doctor swap spots with the other passenger. Only thing, the other passenger? Well, it was a dog. That's right, D-O-G, dog. When the officer approached the car, he found the pup in the driver's seat and the man in the passenger seat. And the man got out of the car and explained that it was not him. He had not been driving. Nope, the other dog was the one driving. Well, the police report went on to say the male party showed clear signs of intoxication. They even shared a Facebook post about the ordeal. Now, the officer said he asked the man if he had been drinking, and then the man, well, he just took off on foot, ran 20 yards before the officer caught him. And the guy, well, he had quite a rap sheet, 2 active warrants from other places. He also was charged with DUI, driving while under the influence, also driving while licensed under suspension, speeding 20 to 24 miles over the speed limit, and resisting arrest without violence. Now, the police department was kind enough to provide a following update on the man's canine partner in crime. They did that on their Facebook posts. They said, quote, "The dog was given to an acquaintance of the driver to take care of while the party was in jail." And they went on to say, the dog does not face any charges. He was just let go with a warning. Maybe that warning should be, pick a new master, right? Well, though this story could have ended in a much more disastrous way, well, many Facebook users, they found it comical. They really had a field day in the comments section. Somebody said, thank God the dog was sober. Another one said, y'all should release the body cam. I think it would be hilarious. Someone else, a little more serious, said, we hope this poor pooch goes to a more responsible and loving owner. Well, my friend, this idiot who thought he could trade places with a dog for driving drunk. This guy is indeed our Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook of the week. Well, now back to our main focus. Last week now, we told you how the Golden State Killer got caught. Today, we're going to learn how he was able to elude police all those years. But first, let's learn a little bit about the man who struck terror across California. His name, Joseph James DeAngelo, born November the 8th, 1945. You look him up, it will say that he was an American serial killer, a serial rapist, burglar, a former police department officer who committed at least 13 murders, 51 rapes, 120 burglaries, all across California between 1974 and 1986. And as we shared last week, he is responsible for at least 3 separate crime sprees throughout the state. And we also went on to share how he was known as the ransacker, who burglarized homes, then as the rapist, who turned violent, and then the night stalker, the original night stalker, as his violence turned to horrific killings. He even taunted, threatened both victims and the police, from phone calls and other written communication. Now, there were other suspects, but they were cleared, usually by DNA evidence, alibis, and other means. But in 2001, DNA testing, well, it told police that the East Area rapists and the original Night Stalker, well, they're the same person. And it was a large factor, this case was a large factor in establishing California's DNA database, a large database that takes all the data of crimes in California and around the country. And by the way, it is second only to what some people say is the number 1 database in the nation, and that's in the state of Virginia. Excuse me, I misspoke, the Commonwealth of Virginia. I lived in Virginia for a few years, worked with the Chesterfield County Police Department. And my friend, I want you to know that Virginia has a very, very top mark grade in solving cold cases. Well, California kind of caught up with Virginia all over this case of the Golden State Killer using that database. By the way, that name, the Golden State Killer, well, it was given in early 2013 by a crime writer by the name of Michelle McNamara. And you remember she was a true crime author. She was author of the book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer. Now, unfortunately, Michelle died before she could see that the Golden State Killer was identified. But her book lived on, was finished by others, was a very important source for investigators as they searched for the killer. Now, among those who helped see her work through was her actor-comedian husband, a guy by the name of Patrick Oswalt. You remember watching him on TV, quite a funny character. Now, that book was published in February 2018. Later, the book turned into a 2020 HBO documentary series called, I'll be gone in the dark. So who is this guy that was gone in the dark? Again, Joseph James DeAngelo. His birthplace, Bath, New York. There, Kathleen and Joseph James DeAngelo Sr., well, he was a sergeant in the United States Army. That's his dad. He had 2 sisters and a younger brother. Something that kind of stands out in his early life is that he witnessed, now this is according to reports from a relative, that he had actually witnessed, now get this, the rape of his own sister Connie. And that rape was committed by 2 airmen in a warehouse in West Virginia. You see, the family was stationed there as his father was in the services. His other sister, Rebecca, well, she claimed that our killer himself was abused by his own father while he was growing up. Now, I got to ask you, does that excuse his actions? Nope, not at all. Unfortunately, many are abused. That does not mean that they all turn into serial killers. Something else that stands out, well, prosecutors reported that DeAngelo committed burglaries and tortured and killed animals during his teenage years. Now, if you have listened to Charlie Crimebuster in the past, you'll recall me sharing with you the trilogy that sometimes criminals use in looking for serial killers. 3 things, fascinating things that happens with a majority of serial killers. Not all, but some. Those 3 things, as a child, as an adolescent: 1, setting fires; 2, bedwetting; and 3, torturing of animals. Well, our guy, according to reports, was one who tortured animals. Now, our killer, he joined the Navy in 1964, served 22 months during the Vietnam War. Actually stationed on a couple ships there. I think one of them was the USS Piedmont, another was the Canberra. And as he came out of the military, well, then he went right to school, college, maybe used some of that good support that the military gives people to go to school. He actually earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He had already had an associate degree in police science. And in May, well, he put his education to use by becoming a police officer. Yep, police officer. This killer was a police officer at one time. That was from May 1973 to August 1976. He was actually, now get this, hold on to your hat, he was a burglary unit police officer. Yep, while he was going around breaking into homes, he was actually a burglary unit police officer. He served in Auburn, one of the cities there, from August 1976 to 1979, but then his police career came to an abrupt end. Yep, guess this now. This guy who was supposed to be so smart breaking into other homes, well, he wasn't quite that smart because he was arrested for shoplifting. Shoplifted a hammer, dog repellent. We all know what he would use that dog repellent for, don't we? He was sentenced to 6 months of probation, fired from the police department that October. And during the process of being fired, he didn't go peacefully, not at all. He even threatened to kill the chief of police, allegedly even stalked the chief's house. And over a period of 20 months now, he was believed to be that guy called the ransacker, constantly going through people's homes and houses, stealing things. Now, my friend, I shared with you that we're going to talk to you about how he was able to elude the police for so long. Well, here's one of the reasons. You see, he ended up perfecting his criminal skills with practice. That's right. Through his burglaries, he learned important things to hone in his skills. A good example is the fact that for some time, well, the crime community was talking about blue and green fibers left at the crime scene. Many thought this might be a clue in catching the killer. However, the fibers were simply from where he would tear up and cut up fabric to use as ligatures to tie people up. However, now get this. I guess after he read about this or heard about this, or maybe he even did it on his own, but he stopped leaving the ligatures behind. You see, he gets smarter as he goes along. He would simply take those with him. You see, he learned from his mistakes. He got better with each crime he committed. So that's one of the first reasons he was so hard to catch. That was that he learned to perfect his criminal skills. Now, another reason it was difficult to catch him was because he changed his M.O., I say somewhat. You see, this was one of the reasons the police thought they were after three different people. At first, he was a ransacker, just a common thief to go around and steal things out of people's homes, ransack through all of their property. But then, more violently, he became a rapist. And even more horrific, he becomes a killer. Now, while he may have used similar M.O. in all of these, his propensity for violence escalated, and that in turn changed his M.O. You see, so this change in the M.O. is something that did help him elude police officers. Now, another thing that helped him elude the police was that he had law enforcement experience. That's right. If you remember back, when he started his law enforcement, he was already a part of the burglary squad. He knew all about law enforcement's techniques. He knew the ins and outs of an investigation. He knew what cops looked for at a crime scene. He did not leave fingerprints behind. He did not show his face. He had a planned escape with escape routes. He knew how to stay under the radar. He was even smart enough to use dishes to put on tied victims that would send him a warning. That is, if the tied person was trying to escape, the dishes would rattle or fall off. He was a very cruel, horrible person, but who was intelligent in the commission of his crimes. Hey, he not only fooled the cops, he was so good he fooled those that was closest to him. His daughter, well, she thought he was a wonderful father. And no doubt he loved his daughter, if some person like that could love anybody. In fact, interesting to note, after the birth of his daughter, he stopped his horrible crimes for a time. Then he slipped back up and came again, but then he stopped for a final time. Almost as if he had such love for his daughter and this occasion in his life that it made him want to stop killing. Now remember, his daughter thought he was a wonderful father. He not only fooled his daughter, he fooled his wife. You see, she believed that he was really away working when he was away. She thought it was just a work thing. She didn't know he was going around robbing people, raping people, and killing people. You see, my friend, if you can fool those close to you, you probably can fool others, don't you think? And because probably he was a cop, because he was a cop, had law enforcement experience, he also knew that it would be good for him to change his crimes to different jurisdictions throughout the state. You see, he knew, especially in those days, that his crime spree, that the different jurisdictions of law enforcement, they were not as connected as they are today. He knew that. Knew they weren't connected. Knew they often would not share information. In fact, as I shared earlier, it was through this case, or at least it was a high factor in putting together that California database that all jurisdictions would use the same data and file the same data and share it throughout the state to help solve cold cases and catch criminals. But during that time, they did not have that database. And he knew by taking his crime sprees from one jurisdiction to the other, it would have him level up on the cops. Now, my friend, while he was successful in eluding police at the current time frame, he could not elude police in the future time frame. That's right. Maybe currently, but not future. Because he had no idea at the time he was committing these horrific deeds, that something like DNA would lead to his capture. Now, had he known that, I'm confident he would still kill, but he probably would be more careful about leaving DNA behind. As I've often told you on the program, you see, my friend, when you go to a crime scene and you leave that crime scene, you always leave something behind, even something small, like DNA. And today, they're better than ever at catching people with DNA. They can even process touch DNA today, and they can catch a killer. Most recently, I shared with you on a past podcast about how such DNA, touch DNA, how that DNA led to the capture of the Idaho College murderer, or I should say alleged murderer, since he's not yet been tried. But remember, he left touch DNA on that knife sheath that he left behind as he killed those college students, allegedly. You see, my friend, it was DNA that also led to the capture of the Golden State Killer. So now we know why and how he eluded police all those years. But let me ask you, what happened after they caught him? Well, you may want to know that there was a sort of a confession. That's right, D'Angelo made a confession of sorts. That was after his arrest, where he cryptically referred to an inner personality named Jerry, who had forced him to commit the wave of crimes that ended abruptly in 1986. Now, according to the Sacramento County prosecutor, he said that D'Angelo said the following to himself while he was alone in a police interrogation room. This was after his arrest back in 2018. And he said these words while he was in an interrogation room. Maybe he did know or maybe he didn't know, but he was being recorded. He said, quote, "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. He was like in my head, He's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. But I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives, so now I've got to pay the price." Well, he called his inner demon Jerry. Now, don't get carried away with that. We humans always look to rationalize our bad behavior. You recall in the past episodes of Lori Vallow how they used light and dark scales of humans to rationalize their murders. And the fact that he said he pushed Jerry out, well, that proves that he could control what he did and did not do. This wasn't something that he couldn't control. My friend, let me tell you right now, people kill because they can. There's no excuse to what this monster did. So what happened? What happened at the trial? Well, D'Angelo could not be charged with the rapes or the burglaries because most of those, the statute of limitations had expired. But he was charged with 13 counts of murder, 13 counts of kidnapping. And D'Angelo was arraigned in Sacramento on August 23rd, 2018. In November 2018, though, prosecutors from those 6 involved counties, they got together and they figured out what it would cost to take this to take this case through trial. And they collectively estimated, now get this, that if they took all this to trial, it would cost taxpayers $20 million last 10 years. Nonetheless, on April the 10th, 2019, prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. Judge even ruled that cameras would be allowed in the courtroom during the trial. Then on March the 4th, 2020, D'Angelo, he offered to plead guilty if the death penalty was taken off the table. But the prosecutor said, no deal, no deal. They did not accept that at that time. But then, on June the 29th, a few months later, as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty, D'Angelo, he did plead guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and special circumstances, including murder committing during burglaries and rapes. He also pled to 13 counts of kidnapping. And on August the 21st, 2020, D'Angelo received multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, as often in these things, D'Angelo had to listen to the victims' families make what is called victim impact statements, and he heard plenty of those. His comment after listening to those statements, he said, quote, "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." And so in November 2020, he was sent to North Kern State Prison, and then, of course, he was also moved to a California state prison, where right now he's there in prison, rotting flesh until he dies. And there you have it, my friend. That's what happened to the Golden State Killer. But wait a minute, there's something we can all learn from the Golden State Killer today. It is something that can help ourselves and the people we love stay safer. You see, my friend, not only did methods of catching killers evolve and help us be better detectives, but methods of preventing crime has evolved as well. Well, in those days, preventing crime was locking your doors. But with a master criminal, well, a locked door is just a slight challenge. But today, my friend, we have stronger locks to put on our doors, stronger locks to put on our windows. It would be good for you to use them. Today, we have alarms, and it would be good for you to use them. He used his own alarm to alert him if somebody was stirring around trying to get untied. How much more you and I should use alarms to keep us safe. You see, most of the time, just the noise of an alarm can scare away a burglar. In fact, last week on Facebook, I shared a post that I thought was good. And that post is to leave your car keys next to your bed on a stand. So at night, if you hear somebody breaking in, just push that button and your car alarm will go off in the middle of the night. If you hear somebody break into your room, push that button and a car alarm will go off. Better yet, have your doors and windows alarmed so that when entry is sought, an immediate alarm can go off. Use cameras. You see, criminals think twice if they think they'll be caught on cameras. And there are a good number of people today who are arming themselves ready for that if it should happen to them. As I've often said, it can be a good choice. That is, if you're willing to take the time to practice and to learn to be safe with your weapon. You see, we need smart carry today, not just everybody carrying, but we need to carry smart. That includes keeping your weapons away, safe, locked away from little ones. But the bottom line to all of this is simply this. You, Y-O-U, must take responsibility for your own safety. You see, when cops are called, when I was called to a scene, it was most often after the effect. Law enforcement is enforcing the laws. It's not often preventing you from being a victim of a crime. You see, keeping you and your family safe, that is your responsibility. And you should take that responsibility seriously. So again, here's Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, my friend, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.